COVID-19 has made life harder for our security officers. In addition to their usual work, many now have to do the thankless task of enforcing COVID-19 safe management measures. The Union of Security Employees say that this has increased tensions for security officers. Indeed, a survey of 1,002 security officers between September and November 2020 found that 2 out of 5 security officers had experienced some form of abuse in the course of their work. I thank our security officers for their service. This bill is a welcome step for increased protection for them. I have 2 points of clarification. First, I would like to ask what counts as a security officer's duty. This bill is meant to protect security officers from abuse. To this end, it strongly punishes individuals for assaulting, hurting, or harassing security officers. However, this enhanced punishment kicks in only if it happens during the execution or discharge of duty by the officer. Can ministers share what counts as the execution and discharge of an officer's duty? Do these new offences apply only to functions outlined in Section 13 of the Private Security Industry Act, or do they apply to any functions reasonably connected to a security officer's work? We need to be clear about this, as security officers may be required to perform diverse tasks not outlined in Section 13 of the Act. Such tasks may equally put the security officers at risk of abuse and harassment. We should look to protect security officers performing such tasks too. My second clarification relates to the defences against the offence of intentionally causing harassment, alarm, or distress to a security officer under Section 17C. Notably, the wording of Section 17C tracks the wording used in Section 3 of POHA. Section 3 of POHA deals with the offence of intentionally causing harassment, alarm, or distress. One of the defences to Section 17C is that the accused did not know of or had no reason to believe that the words, behaviour, or communications would be perceived by the target person. However, this is not a defence to the similar offence of intentionally causing harassment in Section 3 of POHA. Instead, this defence appears only in Section 4 of POHA. Section 4 of POHA deals with the offence of behaviour which is likely to cause harassment, alarm, or distress. Importantly, Section 4 is different from Section 3 of POHA in that it does not require intention to cause harassment. It seems inconsistent that a defence to a harassment offence in POHA that does not require the element of intention now applies to a harassment offence in the Private Security Industry Act, which requires intention. In addition to inconsistency across legislation, this seems difficult to understand in principle. Surely, someone who acted with the intention to harass another person should not be allowed to say that they had no reason to believe that harassing conduct would not be perceived by the victim. Can Minister clarify why this defence applies to intentional harassment under Section 17C when it does not apply to intentional harassment under POHA? Does this suggest that intentional harassment under the Private Security Industry Act has a different scope from intentional harassment under POHA? Madam, notwithstanding these clarifications, I stand in support of the bill.
Mr. Yip Hong Wing.
Madam Deputy Speaker, a number of my Yio Chu Kang residents are security officers. Security officers play an unsung but important role in our society. We sleep soundly at night, knowing that with their vigilance, we are safe and that our property is protected. Yet security officers are not safe from abuse. Many members have spoken about this today. Nearly a third of security officers have experienced abuse on the job, a 30% surge over the past 2 years. We cannot claim to be a gracious and kind society if our workers are going to work expecting that it's unfortunate but normal to be insulted, threatened, or even assaulted on the job. We need to improve protection and welfare of our security officers. I would like to highlight 4 issues. First, Madam Deputy Speaker, we must be able to deter harassment by ensuring effective means to capture concrete evidence. The bill introduces definitions to the offences that constitute the types of harassment and abuse faced by security officers. This is a good initiative. However, without a witness or closed-circuit camera in the vicinity, harassment and verbal abuse can be difficult to prove. The high-profile case of a condominium resident verbally abusing a security guard last year came to light only because it was caught on camera and then circulated. Many other security officers would suffer in silence. Similar to the point made earlier by Member Joan Pereira, I urge the government to consider recommending or requiring security guards to wear a body camera. Notwithstanding, we must account for the need to balance the provision of adequate protection with the challenges of ensuring data privacy, as well as managing rising costs in the industry. To address these concerns, one suggestion is for body cameras to be considered if the security guard works in a location where it's susceptible to higher risk of abuse, patrolling alone, or are a range of nearby CCTVs. The body camera proposal is not just beneficial for the wearer. Section 17 of POHA states that the burden remains on the prosecution to prove the offence is beyond a reasonable doubt and disprove a defence raised based on a balance of probabilities. However, whether the accused's choice of words and tone can be interpreted as abuse is subjective. Moreover, prior provocation may have occurred to lead to their choice of words and tone. There has been feedback that some security officers are rude. There are usually two sides to every story. The truth usually lies somewhere in the middle. The body camera can help to even the odds. It can shed some objective light into where truth may lie. If harassment of security officers fall under this act, the burden of proof falls on the accused to justify their word choice and behavior. Likewise, without witnesses and audiovisual proof, it will be difficult to prove their innocence. Yet, in the eyes of the law, an accused is innocent until proven otherwise, or beyond reasonable doubt. The onus should be on the plaintiff, in this case the security guard, to provide the evidence of harassment or abuse. In this case, the evidence will come from the officer's body camera. It is indisputable evidence that is up for evaluation by the courts rather than by personal interpretation. Second, Madam Deputy Speaker, security officers must be equipped with the necessary skills to protect themselves and to react appropriately when faced with aggression. Self-defense training should be recommended and made accessible for those who are in the security industry or those planning to join it. These courses should be tailored to different age groups. This is because the age demographic in the industry is varied, with youngsters in their 20s to elderlies in their 60s. Those in a front-facing role should also receive training on communication skills. These skills should focus on managing disputes with residents and de-escalating conflicts. In this regard, would such training and skill sets be made mandatory in subsidiary legislations and guidelines? How does the government plan to work with the industry to further professionalize the sector and provide pathways for progression? Expectations will be increased. However, these skill sets are transferable and will serve security officers well if they wish to explore other roles or to take on greater responsibilities in the sector. Third, Madam Deputy Speaker, security officers are often ordered to do things that is beyond their job scope, and they rarely receive remuneration for it. A resident of mine who is a security officer in a condominium told me that he's been asked to drop off the mail or food delivery, water the plants, or even clean up messes when the cleaner is not available. While some security officers do so out of goodwill, it should not be a given. Not only is this unfair, it is also dangerous. They are caught away from their focus of security work. In the meantime, there is no one around to cover for them. Although they can lodge a complaint to MOM, I have been informed that some employers tend to side with the residents. Lodging a complaint may also threaten the officer's job security. So most would rather accept the extra work. Beyond the above-mentioned issues, many security officers have to work up to 12 hours a day for 6 days a week to alleviate a persistent manpower crunch. The long hours and lack of rest time make the job unappealing, which only perpetuates the problem. I hope the bill will introduce regulations to make it explicitly illegal for security officers to be tasked with extra work beyond the agreed job scope. But it takes more than laws to eradicate the undesirable mentality that such workers are the beck and call of the privileged who engage their services. We must continue to address this problem through multiple angles. This includes drawing awareness to the problem through education and by enforcing stiff penalties against those who abuse their positions of power towards the vulnerable.